by sitting, as we often but don't always do. A suggestion is to sit in Siddhasana. If it's a comfortable pose for you, it doesn't cause knee problems and that kind of thing, then Siddhasana is a pose where the heels line up with each other and with the midline of the body. There are other seated positions, obviously. Now, in Siddhasana, by the way, if you've got one of these kind of brick blocks, that's what I suggest you sit on. Obviously on its lowest height. But if you haven't got a brick block, perhaps you've got one of these sort of foam blocks, the rectangular shaped blocks. Well, in that case, I'd take the block, I'd turn it this way around, sit on it like that. So it's the short end of the block. That's for Siddhasana, but you might be wanting to sit in Sukhasana on a couple of blocks, and of course you can use good sized books in the place of blocks. We're going to raise the chest up. We're going to breathe through our noses. We're going to drop the shoulders. We might close or half close the eyes. The body might have movement to it. Welcome, Catherine. Oh, welcome. Welcome, Sam. People joining us. Really nice to see you. Really nice to see you. Uplifting to see you, actually. So those just joining, we're starting by sitting. I've suggested Siddhasana, and I've mentioned that Siddhasana is a pose you can sit on a block, but you might want to sit with the, in Siddhasana you do sit with the heels aligned with each other in one way or another, whether the legs are on top of each other or one in front. But you could also sit in Sukhasana, which I articulate with this 1980s sort of dance move. So your legs are crossed, there's a gap between the legs and pelvis, or you can sit in another pose such as Virasana, as long as you can sit up tall and straight and buoyant. That's all that's required. Once you've got a position using blocks or blankets that feels upright, then I've suggested closing or half closing the eyes. Keep your chest lifted from the xiphoid cartilage. Just before you close your eyes, just take your thumb, right? Put it at the bottom of the breastbone where you can feel the cartilaginous area, which is about the size of the pad of your thumb, and lift that up. Tummy will draw a little bit back, naturally. You're not overly doing that, especially not me, who just had some pasta. I'm not supposed to do that, by the way, before you but anyway. Rules are made to be broken, I think. Stretching the sides of the body. Keep that bottom of the breastbone up. And those eyes closed or half closed. There may be movement of the pelvis, left, right, forwards, backwards. And the movement has a purpose. And of course, most of us regularly get pulled out of our centers by our sense bases. In the Indian tradition, the sense bases are as you'd expect, plus the mind. So you have nose, eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and mind as your sense organs. And they pick up smells, sounds, sights, tastables, that which you can feel, and that which the mind picks up, ideas, views, memories, opinions. And so these sense organs, of course, bring us information, and we sometimes, quite commonly, get drawn out into that. And that's fine, but if you lose a sense that you have a center, then all the meaning goes out of whatever you're drawn into, you know? So feel your center and then feel into whatever you're feeling from that center without moving out of it. And that's a very powerful thing to do. A very powerful thing to do. Takes trust. That's not that difficult either. People like you and me, you know, been around a few times, this world. And you've tried other ways, you know. You've tried grasping, struggling, and you know where it leads. And you've also tried trust. You've experienced trust. You've experienced surrender. You've experienced the magic of it. we're going to plant a bija mantra, Hum, spelled H-U-M. The H has a mark across the top, the M has a dot underneath it, making it a long oo sound in the middle, oo. And the M, well, it can be labial or it can be not. You can do it with your lips or not. But in this instance, we're not going to do it. We're going to do it as a nasal without using the lips. So we're going to place this Hum in the heart. We imagine that the mantra as a sort of something you can see, perhaps as light, quite a common thing to do, helpful. We're going to chant Hum 3 times, imagining we're planting that in the heart. Some even like to visualize a lotus flower with this Hum on top of it. Okay, so take a deep breath in. Om. 什么 And the last one. And then deep breaths. So just feel into that mantra that you've placed. It sort of gives itself a chance to root in a little, to settle in, and that gives us an anchor for all our actions, and our actions that are anchored from the heart are called yoga. Actions that are not anchored from the heart are not called yoga. Thoughts that are anchored from the heart are yogic thoughts. Speech that is anchored from the heart is yogic speech. Movements that are anchored from the heart are yogic movements. Change the cross of your legs if you took a cross-legged position. So the other one goes in front. Okay, and then draw the buttock flesh out and back again. So you really feel it. It's a relationship. That's what's lovely about yoga. It's not a thing that you superimpose onto your experience. It's a relationship. And a relationship is a beautiful thing of any kind, any relating to anything at all, to your own body, to Gaia, or Gaia as it's known in the Latin tradition, Gaia in the Greek tradition, or no, hang on, Gaia in the Greek tradition, so Mother Earth, Earth Goddess. You can know that as a whole, or you can know it through a part of it, like a thought or an emotion. This is relationship. And relationship obviously takes opening. You have to open. And that takes a kind of confidence. You can't open without confidence. The only confidence that anyone can really have comes when they sit in the heart. 3 more rounds of the same bija mantra. Very powerful thing to do. The word in Sanskrit is nyasa, for placement. We know it nowadays in yoga from Ashtanga vinyasa, which is still nyasa, means placement. I'm going to chant Hong again. Please do your most to really try and feel it as a sort of physical sensation in the heart. Maybe you can visualize it too as light or the actual symbol on a lotus, or just the English, or the Roman alphabet rather, not the English, but the Roman alphabet, H-U-M, H with a line across the top, M with a dot underneath it. Take a deep breath in for the first. Imagine you're placing it next one. Last one. And it resonates on after you finish making the sound, as if it was still making the sound, but internally, home. And concentrate on that as a point of stability for you. Because everything else is not stable, is it? The sense organs are relating to that which is unstable. Physical sensations, not reliable, are they? I'm not against them, are we? Not at all, but they're just not reliable. They change all the time. Mental sensations, what comes in through your eyes and ears and nose and skin. Okay, really good yoga practice would be to just sit for the hour or so now, like that, but we'll do a quite good yoga practice instead by coming out of that position and laying for a moment on our backs. But I would like you to have, if you don't mind, a belt or something that will do the job of a belt. I'll just check that, that you're all okay. Marvellous and wonderful it is to see you. And you got your belt. It would also be super and duper if you had space to the side of you. Stretch your arms out. Great, perfect. Very well stretched. Good job. Okay, good. Now once you stretch your arms out, you now know you've got space, so that's great. So you're going to raise up one of your legs, doesn't matter which one. I'll just repress my phone. Doesn't matter which one, and bring the belt around the front of the heel and raise the leg up. That's it. The other leg can extend out. And one way I like to do that, as you probably know, is to skim my heel as if I'm throwing a stone or skimming a stone on water. So I've described that before. I think you've all heard my description, so you can feel it out yourself. And I find it utility in getting a little extra extension using my foot, the lower leg foot, a little extra extension in the inner groin. Make sure that the neck is relaxed, so the chin is not pulled towards the forehead. Allow things like natural movement that embody you, if you want a better phrase. So any movements that embody you. So you come out of the abstract. You know, the abstract, you've probably met this concept before, I only met it the other day. There's, according to some modern psychologists, there's two ways we can be. You know? There's the remembering self, and then there's the self who's now experiencing. And the experiencing self. And the remembering self's always comparing and saying, what have I done? What should I become? Making stories, as it were. And the experiencing self is this. No, it has nothing to do with future or past. Now we're going to hold the strap with one hand only, the same hand as the leg that's raised, and the other hand is going onto the other leg, where it can rub or pat or simply lay on the top of the thigh, whatever's helpful in releasing the bone down towards the ground. Pull the leg then towards you and out, the one with the belt around it, down to the side. I recommend a fairly slow pace of movement so that we can feel a melting between the front hips. A melting that I hope you can feel is embodied, or causing a sense of presence, enrichment of the sensations. And in this way, by going deeper into our sensations, we're not tossed around by them, the mind isn't buzzing between one sense base to the next. It's concentrating on the sensations. And by staying in one experience, that of tactility, that of contact, sparsha, from the root sprish in Sanskrit, the root sprish, which means to make contact or to touch. Okay, well done. Come up with that leg. Take hold of it in some graceful aeronautical display with the other hand, and let it continue over the body and stretch out your other arm and breathing deep. The jaw should be soft. The foot may come all the way down to the floor, it doesn't have to. But take note that the lower leg can roll with you. In fact, should roll with you. You're not trying to keep the toes facing up or anything like that. Bring the leg back up in your own time. Bend the lower leg. Release the upper leg. Put the belt on your tummy and temporarily hands behind your head and take a deep breath. And then why not, let's enjoy deep breaths. It's a very simple thing. And of course, it's not unusual for the mind to have some restlessness. In one Indian philosophical system, the mind is seen to be atomic, really tiny, and it darts around incredibly fast between different objects and brings back the information to what that system calls the Atman, the self. And that metaphor does kind of work for our experience. We do feel like the mind often darts around, and that's okay, you know. But by recognizing its movement, we don't have to be caught in it. You know? In fact, it's by recognizing it that we're not caught in it. Now, before we do the other leg, we're going to lift our head and simply gaze upon our navel area, Nava chakra, one of the chakra areas that Patanjali recommends the practitioner to bring their attention to, another being the heart chakra and another being the throat. These are chakras mentioned in Patanjali even before the tantric system really brought about more awareness of chakras and more developments of chakras. We have these three even before that in Patanjali. Bring your head back down. Take a deep breath. Take a few deep breaths and keep them coming and going as you release your hands from behind your head and raise up your other leg. Bring the strap in a similar position around the front of the heel, and similarly, you might move your foot against your strap. And of course, any movement you make is there to deepen or enrich the experience we're having. So it becomes something we can absorb into. The Sanskrit tradition tells us ekagrata, 1 point, ekagrata. When you're ready, flex up the other leg and like you did so well before, skim the heel, like you were skimming a stone on water. So it touches, lifts and travels, touches, lifts and travels, touches, lifts and travels. And the back of the leg extends and the front of the leg draws towards your head, and they're relating to each other. And then nudge out through whatever method, movements of your foot probably, nudge out a bit more length in the inner groin, wake it up, open it up. But be subservient to what's actually effective. Sometimes it takes longer than we would want, but there it is, it's just what it is. Sometimes it's a movement that we haven't done before that works today that maybe hasn't been there before, so that's fine too. Hold the strap with one hand only, other hand on top of the other thigh. Okay? Where it can rub, pat, or simply lay. But whatever's encouraging a dropping feeling of that bone, a meditative breath-centered, interested, dropping feeling. Pull the leg towards you and then out to its own side. Again, I recommend fairly slow, doing it fairly slow, so that you feel you can soften between the front hips. The inguinal ligament. And if you're slow, the truth is that the present moment is a movement. So you just get into the present moment, there's going to be subtle releases that are part of that. You don't have to do everything yourself. Bringing your leg back up and swapping in another wonderful aeronautical display of grace and skill. The other hand onto the belt and the leg continues over. The other arm stretches out, palm up. And ideally you're keeping your foot above the height of the hip, where possible. Breath is deep. Breath is expressive. So useful for your chest muscles, pectoralis. So these are large, sort of fan-shaped muscle that fans out onto the breastbone where they connect. And they connect to the arm bone. From the arm bone to the breastbone. A fan-like shape. And of course, it's a very sensitive, sort of beautifully sensitive part of the body to feel into the stretch, and to encourage yourself to say more yes through the body, because the body sometimes gets conditioned into locking down. We want it to open up. Bring the leg back up, slow, in your own time, in your own way. Lower the other leg, or rather bend the other leg, and then lower the top leg. Put the belt to one side, put your hands under your head, draw 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 deep breaths. Take some deep breaths. And a sense of savoring. Now, it's not that there aren't other pulls, other draws, other habits, other volitions. There are, nearly always. But we're making a commitment. To a sense of presence. And a sense of breath into the presence. Now, we're going to lift up our feet, bent knees. We're going to lift up our head. Take a few deep breaths like that. The lower back gets a little massage. It's not particularly strong, but it's good enough. This deep massage. And then we're going to extend one leg, doesn't matter which one, to about 45 degrees, keeping the lower back close to the floor. And then retract that and do the same on the other one. Okay. And then one more time on each side while I liberate a bumblebee who can't seem to get out. Cute and fluffy as he is. And then once you've done equal amounts on both sides, then you can bring your feet back down to the floor. Here you go, buddy. Here you go. And take some more deep breaths. Jaw soft, eyes soft, breathing deep. Lifting up your feet, lifting up your head. Open the angle at the back of your knees. Take the opposite elbow to the opposite knee. Doesn't matter which one. We're going to do both, so it doesn't matter. And then raise up the one you've turned away from, and then descend partly and raise. Do that 3 times. Descending and raising. Swap to the other side. Descending and raising the opposite leg. 3 times. And back to center. And head down, feet down, and everyone takes deep breaths, please. Really savor this moment. The sensations of this moment, the tactile sensations of this moment. We've talked before how contact can stay as contact or can transmute into touch. This is exactly what we want in yoga, our contact, the sense of contact, our sensations of our chest muscles and arm muscles. We want that to move not just from contact, but to touch, our lower back on the floor, feet on the floor. And that touch transmutes into intimacy, which is where you're beginning to blend with what previously was an object, the object and you, the subject and object blend. So this is intimacy. And intimacy soon reveals its deeper nature, which is infinity. Because once subject and object melt down, in other words, once both become subject, as it were, I am you and you are me, then that process just keeps on collapsing, and you can feel how both the subject and the object are one, but also they're part of everything else. Now we're going to lift our head one more time, looking again towards the Nava chakra. I've mentioned before, but I'll mention again, you can move your hand position if you need to, or you find it useful to, having it lower, having it higher, right up towards the scalp, or right down towards the neck, or just on the back of the head. Breathing easy. Now we're going to raise up onto our balls of the feet and toes, so the legs are much higher, the heels are much higher. And then we're simply going to pull one leg, flex one leg towards us, and then swap it for the other. So it's just toe tapping. Doesn't seem like much, but we're yogins. So we're studying the sensations. We're absorbing in the sensations, especially in the little pauses between the swap, just before the swap. There'll be a little kumbhaka, a little pause. And feel everything in that moment. Not contriving it, just feeling it. So let there be these pauses where the leg comes towards you. Feel everything. And then swap. A couple more times on each leg. Don't forget you can adjust your hand position if you need to. Okay, we're going to end up with both legs lifted. That's the position we're going to end up with. We're going to feel the upper abdominal fibers lowering us as the head goes down. Then the feet go down. Then I'd love it if you take a deep breath, deep breath. And then another after that, another after that, another after that, another after that. Release your hands from behind your head. Stretch your arms out with your elbows higher than your shoulders. Elbows higher than your shoulders, only by a bit, not much, just a little bit. You can have a little bend in the elbow. Still keep those elbows higher than the shoulders. Now, there are two ways to go for this, and one way, well, both ways work for some people, and only one of them works for others in terms of feeling comfortable. But if I tell you both, then you'll know. The first way is recommended if you don't have any SI problems at all, sacroiliac problems. But saying that, some people who do find this way more useful, and it's the flex. So you pull the legs towards you, lift the pelvis, shunt it towards the opposite side of the way the legs are going, and then bring them down. Now that's what I'm going to recommend we all do. But if it doesn't feel comfortable, simply lift the legs without the shunt and then let them move over that way. Huh? So if you're not sure, try the first lift, prick up the pelvis, shift it to the opposite side of the way your legs are going to go, and then bring your legs down, hovering or landing, looking up at the ceiling. This is the wonderful pose, Jatara Paravatasana. And breathe again into the pectoralis. Of course, abdominal fibers are a big player here. So keep drawing in and up. Breathe the back arm back down. For me, the lift and shift keeps my sacrum fairly firm into the SI joint. So that works well for me, but it works in with a combination of drawing the tummy in, pulling the chest up, and feeling the area, the back of the pelvis as well. Okay, return to center. Land your feet when ready. Shift whenever needs shifting, shoulder blades and buttocks, and perhaps head. Take deep breaths. We're really starting to savor the breath today. I hope that you're feeling that. Starting to really open up to appreciate the breath. When ready, flex up again. Fully flex and lift and shift if that's the method you're taking. Try and keep one knee on top of the other to whatever extent you can. And hover or land. You're breathing your back arm back down, a bit lifted, which is fairly likely. You're breathing it back down, which means using longer exhalations. Exhaling for longer periods of time. And feeling that melting feeling. Well done. Return to center. And realign. Get everything comfortable. Normally it's the pelvis, shoulder blades and head that need realigning, and then it's deep breaths. Deep breaths. Neck relaxed. Then we're going to roll over. Doesn't matter which way we roll. And once we've rolled over, we're going to come up onto hands and knees position. So as soon as you're ready, you can come up onto hands and knees. And once you're on your hands and knees, we'll just take a breath or two like that. It's quite intuitive sometimes to wag the tail, so feel free. Breathe deep and honest. Advance your knees towards your wrists and turn both your wrists, both your fingers, the other way around so that they face towards your knees. Then it becomes a sort of study, an absorption practice, where you breathe around the circumference of your wrists. Breathe around the circumference of the wrists. So deep breaths, following that circumference. And looking for upeksha, evenness. And I don't know, I presume I'm not special. Because, I presume what I can do, you can do, right? Because I don't feel very particularly special, so I'm pretty sure I'm not. So I can feel that I can sort of move through absorption, through subject and object blending into each other, through object, as it were, becoming subject, or the subject becoming bigger and subsuming more objects into it until it subsumes everything and the universe becomes subject. I am everything, which of course brings about wisdom and compassion. So absorb into the carpal tunnel, the arch of little bones at the front of the hand, and breathe all around. Okay, that'll do. Tuck your toes under, peel your hands back up, and sit in a high heel kneeling position. Even if it's tough, but not if you've got metal work in your feet, obviously, then you can't do it, because that's just another layer of impossible. But if it's just tough, then do it still. It won't be here long. Take a few deep breaths. Keep your eyes soft. Keep the breathing natural. Great for the plantar fascia. I do find myself subtly changing the weight from foot to foot, which you might want to try as well. Okay. Coming out of that, we're going to sit possibly on more than one block, but we'll start with one block or book. If you haven't got a block, then use a book, a good big size book, and have the binding forwards. But I do believe that most people will have books for sure. If not, blocks are pretty good. You can buy them real cheap, by the way. second hand from people who are getting rid of them on eBay. Now you're going to sit on your block or whatever you've got to substitute the block with your legs out in front of you. Now I've got another one behind me. I actually don't use it, but I wanted you to see that that can be useful to have another one behind you. It could be a book. And the butterfly is drawn out and back. And you bring yourself to the inner front edge of the sitting bones, which is a meditation, isn't it? The repetition is there to refine our awareness into the present, to focus our awareness in the present. Now, because of the way I'm set up, I've got the screen to the side of me. If you've got the screen to the side of you, bend the leg that's closest to the screen. If you haven't, just bend one of the legs, it won't matter. And then hug your leg by wrapping your arms around it. And take a breath or two. Very simple, tactile. Now, the thing about a hug is, and of course, you know, we're not supposed to hug, are we? I don't know if we are or not. I don't know. Lose track. But the thing about a hug is, what it's all about is this dissolution of this hard edge to self. And all it needs is contact with something that's alive, that it can blend with. Well, here's the body. It's alive, it's part of her, it's part of nature, part of Prakriti, it's part of the goddess. So you don't necessarily need another person. You can do this, you can do the same process, because this belongs to nature too. This leg isn't yours any more than somebody else is yours. So hugging someone, hugging a leg, both can be the same portal to appreciate the goddess, of which the leg and the other person and everything is part of. But also the deeper melting. Obviously moving side to side is often helpful. Now, I could stay there a while, I quite like it, because of that exploration that one can have into what is a hug? Why is it good? You know, or not good. You know, not all hugs are good, are they? Sometimes you have a hug and you're like, oh, it's all right, nothing. And other times it's magical because there's a surrender, and then you might project that onto the other person, but it's about the surrender. You know. It's about union with the goddess. Now we're going to bring our fingers interlaced around the shin now and just pull down on the shin and up in the chest and lumbar. So again, I'm moving just to help get a bit of massage, a bit of lightness, so that I can commit into this shift, attitudinal shift into lightness and presence, or lightness within presence. Now this is Madhyasana number 3. So when you feel sufficiently loosened, we'll pull down and lift up, pull down the shin, lift up in the chest, and then bring the arm that's furthest, the same one as the straight leg, across to the outside of the leg. Those of you with the screen to the side of you will now be turning towards the screen. And then there's a whole load more movements you can take. If you really work your intestines around, little by little, then it's much more helpful than trying to get the body to move in 2 or 3 gross and forceful movements. It just don't work as well as multiple little movements. If you're turning one cell, yeah, it can turn. If you're trying to turn 100,000 cells, it's more difficult. Right? But if you turn one, and then another, and then another. In some cases, the arm, this is quite unusual, but in some cases, the elbow extends beyond the shin, like this. That comes either with really long arms or with lots and lots of practice. Only in that circumstance would anyone consider clasping. And then they would go through the process of holding the outside of the leg and then drawing the arm back along the outside of the leg and then clasping there. But most people are probably better off staying like this if the elbow hasn't got a lot of clearance beyond the shin. Doesn't make you happier, doesn't make you more friends or anything to clasp, okay? So most people like this in this Ubhaya Mudra. Getting the shot, if you're in Ubhaya Mudra or if you're in clasping, Lovely, that's a nice position. But if you're in a Vaya Mudra, see if you can sync up movements of your hand with movements of the shoulder blade. In other words, when the thumb and index finger go forward, see if you can feel some sympathy from the inner edge of the shoulder blade on the same side. So I do it lots of times because it takes me quite a while to get that very, very subtle sync up. Huh? Very, very subtle. I don't even know if anyone else has ever got that instruction. Oh no, they have. People have told me. Maybe you do. Yeah. Oh, you do. Oh, good. Great. Good to hear. Yeah. So it's like this. So it's the index finger and thumb side go forwards as if you're pressing into something, but then you're syncing that up with the shoulder blade moving in, which otherwise is very hard to contact. It's a good one to play with. Return to center. Hold on. Stretch your legs out, a little energy bath. So, why a little energy bath when you can have a proper energy bath? Huh? So, rub everywhere that you can reach. Huh? Soles of the feet, crown of the head, shoulders, shoulder blades. Get that little spot that you find difficult to get when you're putting sun cream on. Everywhere. Face, I always find I quite want to spend quite a while doing my face. And then once you had a good energy bath, you might be still having that bath. Don't let me disturb you. Make sure you do your armpits. Then we're going to do the other side. I've moved, but you don't need to move. There's no need for you to move. Only I move, and that's because I want to still see you. Bending the leg, the other leg, to the one you've done before, and similarly hugging the leg at first. That's to encourage the pelvis to lean forwards and breathe. So we're just encouraging connective tissue to get used to various stretches and movements. So jaw stays soft. Breathing is deep. You might move left and right, forwards and backwards. It's very massagey, I hope. I hope you're finding that. And I could just do that all day because what we talked about before, exploring what is a hug. Why is a good hug so good? Huh? And can I get that even now, here and now, without another person to hug, as it were? Well, remember that your leg is part of the goddess, part of the whole. Doesn't belong to you, as it were. And by that I mean, doesn't belong to a separate autonomous particle that exists independently of everything else. The leg is part of everything. The blood, the lymph. So by hugging it and by moving through the stages of contact to touch, it's so beautiful to do. From contact to touch, to intimacy. And it's just like love immediately. It's like love, it's like dance, it's intimate, it's sensual, super sensual. And through this process, there's this merging, as it were. And we could keep doing that, but we bring the hands back to the shin and pull down and on the shin and up in the chest, and lower back is our sort of target area for that lightness. P.S. I quite like, I've told you this before, I think, to draw my foot, my extended leg a little out, like a centimetre or two. So if you feel like, oh, I'd like to do that too, just feel free, just taking it a little out. It helps with, for me, the depth of the hip joint. When ready, lifting the opposite arm, I use my other hand on the leg to help me get it round, and then as far around as you can. You can have your hand on a block behind you if you find that useful. And multiple movements. Even a middle-aged man who's eating pasta for lunch can work his belly around bit by bit. So much more so for you. So millimeter by millimeter, cell by cell, or just a few cells at a time. It's a lovely way of working. It's very much a jug filled drip by drip, as the Buddha says. or a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, as someone else said. Don't know who said that, but it's good, isn't it? Again, there is the option amongst those whose arms are either long or who have come really far forward, and you can see what I'm indicating, well, unless you turn the other way, but you know from the other side anyway, that your elbow has to be a long way forwards of your shin before you contemplate clasping. Huh? Otherwise, it's super useful not to clasp. Anyway, it's just as good. If you are clasping, by the way, you turn to look back at your foot. If you're not clasping, your head follows the same direction as your chest. If you're clasping, you look at your foot, otherwise you follow your chest. And then, those not clasping, you do get this advantage of playing with the hand to see if you can sync it up with the shoulder blade. So I take a lot of times to do it. I don't think I've got special abilities. So if I can do it, you can do it. I do have tenacity. That is part of my personality, but I'm sure you have that too. Okay, well done. Gently release. Marvelous, marvelous. Marichyasana, number 3. From there into Adho Krishnasana. But, my dear friends, with your hands together, like a beautiful rising sun. Like here. Look at the sun rising. Beautiful. Just see. That's how your hands should be, like a beautiful rising sun or a setting sun. Okay, and towards the front of your mat. Your feet can be hip width apart. And again, subject and object merge. Through movement, perhaps, that might give you the way in. And if you feel more pressure on one side of the wrist than the other, try not to react. Instead, realize that you can change that without changing the posture. You can share the weight more evenly through explorative movement. Not random movement, but explorative movement that looks to deepen one's absorption. It looks to deepen one's absorption. A focus I find useful is opening up the inner groins of the legs, the top of the inner thighs. I visualize as I stretch my heel backwards that the groin opens up. Maybe you'll find that useful too. Okay, well done. Come down slow and aware with awareness, down to your forearms and take your hands as if you're holding bunches of flowers. Take deep breaths like that, just on your forearms, as if you're holding bunches of flowers. Breathing should be deep, movement may well be there. Certainly is in my case. You should only have your elbows shoulder width apart, your wrist should be the same distance as the elbows. And then calmly we're going to lift up our derrière, which we know is French for arse. And once your bum is lifted up in the air, then it's nice again, I find anyway, to create movement that's helpful. And one such movement, apart from side to side, is visualizing and feeling the shoulder blades going deeper in to the back ribs as the armpits open. You could even experiment with raising your toes up, but unless you're super confident, I wouldn't raise both legs up. But if you're super confident, if you're someone who does this sort of thing every day, fine. But most people better off raising a foot and trying not to have too much weight, and obviously raise the other foot after a while. So that to avoid weight, you move, you play, you look for space and lightness. Once you've had a go at raising both legs, if you are trying that, then we'll come down and rest one hand on top of the other. Again, we're going to come back to deep breath. expressive, honest breath, with the jaw soft, with the eyes soft, with the brain even soft. Now I'm going to recommend that you have a belt nearby. I'm going to recommend that you have some supports. Now I've got these bricks here. For some reason we don't have matching bricks. You should have matching something, right? These may be matched, but don't quite. Anyway, it'll be fine for me. And we're going to potentially use these, and potentially use the belt as well. Maybe not, but we'll see. You're going to come forward onto your hands and knees. Sorry to loom at you like that. And then you're going to bring one leg forwards and round the other. Okay? And then work your feet towards each other. Right? So I do a sort of windscreen wiper blade. It doesn't matter, by the way, if your front knee, your top knee is off the mat. It doesn't matter as long as your bottom knee is off the mat. Because in a minute you're going to come off that knee anyway. And the way you're going to come off it is by using your bricks in front of you, taking the weight through your hands. And then if it feels okay, to the extent it does feel okay, and what I mean by that is that you can breathe into it, you begin to sit back, and at some point the upper calf muscle on the top leg gets quite a good crushing. Now you can make that less by pushing into the blocks like this, and then it's like, oh, it's not too bad, it's all right. Or you can make it more by sitting back into it. So this is Siddhasana. That crushing sensation on your calf muscle, believe it or not, is what we want. If you're not leaning forwards or using your hands on the bricks and you feel you've got your balance, you could take the arm part of the position as well, which is opposite arm to opposite leg. So whichever leg's on top, the opposite arm would come up, and if you could reach directly, you would, and if you can't reach directly, you'd use your belt to bridge the gap between the hands. And I love Siddhasana. Some of you might know Terry Appleton, who used to come to classes very many times and is a Vajrasati teacher, although he never teaches, and a Buddhist as well. Lovely human being, Terry Appleton. When he first came to my classes, he hated this pose with a vengeance. But after about, well, I won't tell you how long, it took a while. It's now his favorite pose, okay? So just trying to give you hope for the future, perhaps. Sometimes cramp happens in the foot arches. You're doing great. Well done, Catherine. It's no party, is it, this one? Okay, release. Oh, yeah. Ah, good job. Second side. So coming out, bringing the legs around. Well done, everyone. Similarly, it's important that your feet are on the mat. I've turned around to face you because I like your faces, but you don't have to do that. And even if you do, then you've got the width of your mat. That should be long enough if you allow your top leg knee to start being slightly off the mat. And you should have enough for your feet and ankles at the back. They shouldn't be on the hard floor. Trying to keep your feet close to each other is part of the posture. But obviously you work with your body the way you find it. And some days it just says, just lean forwards and breathe into that. So your hands are on blocks or whatever you've got to rest your hands on. Okay. This might be your better side or worse side. Sensations other than the crushing of your upper calf muscle should be mitigated, either by leaning forwards or by putting a block between the heels and buttocks. But if it's just the calf muscle that's really giving you pain and chip, ride that out, stay with that. If it's other sensations, you can mitigate that with supports. Again, there's the hand position for those that want. Doing great. Doing really great. Breathing into it. Beautiful. You're brilliant. Take deep breaths. Take deep breaths. And enjoy, you know. One of the great things about yoga is how silly it is. That's one of the great things about it, is that it's really quite a ridiculous thing for grown adults to be doing, isn't it? And it's wonderful to feel silly, to realize how silly it all is bliss. It should be, you know, anyone who doesn't know how silly they and life are, you know, they're missing out. Okay, you're brilliant. Gently release, nice and easy. Oh, ow. Why, Jim? Why me? Why now? Why like this? Okay, once you come out of it, then we're going to stand up, okay? Remember, if you've got any difficulty standing, you can have a chair nearby. It really does help. We're going to stand up. I'll adjust my screen a bit so you get to see my marvellous lockdown hair. Which you wouldn't want to miss, would you? It's marvellous. Feet together. I know the hairdressers are open yet, but I just can't, I haven't been. Toes spread out. Sidasana. If you can do it with your feet together, great. But if the thighs come together before the feet, then keep the feet apart. It makes more sense. I like to move my feet quite a lot on the ground. Most people I've observed, especially on teacher training over the years, like to do a forward to back extension. And they always talk about it, and I'm always like, oh, I feel like I'm the only one who likes to do lateral extension. But anyway, that's fine either way, back, forwards, or lateral, or both. Maybe you're like, I want to do both. So lateral is, I lift up the inside of my feet, and I'm all about the lateral. But the back and forth is great too. It just depends what part of the leg you're stimulating. Back and forth stimulates the front and back of the leg. Lateral stimulates the inner and outer leg. Now, when you're ready, let's say that the left leg is going to be our standing leg. We're going to just lift up the heel of the right. And I do lots of reiterative movements on what will be my standing leg, foot, to wake up those foot arches. Such a very important thing to do regularly. And then if you're ready, we're going to raise the leg and take hold around the shin. And the area I think is useful to focus on is the standing leg groin release. Right? The standing leg groin release. You can't force it, you can't decide to make it happen. It's not an act of will in that sense. But you can engage with that. You can begin that relationship. The groin release. It's not an act of someone doing something to the body. It's more of a meditation than that. But the challenge will leave you in a better place than if you didn't take the challenge. Okay. I love it, but I love it all, don't I? Of course I love it, that's why I do the job. Bring your feet together, take deep breaths, really free breath, lateral movement, longitudinal movement, whatever you want on the feet, as long as you're getting those 3 arches. You've got 3 arches on each foot, medial, lateral, and transverse. 3 arches on each foot. Most people are aware of their medial arch, especially if you have pronated arches, collapsed arches. Huh? But we have a lateral arch as well, roughly mirror image on the other side. That should also be awake, and a transverse arch across the front. When you're ready, raising up the other heel and feeling the standing leg foot, really getting in contact with that, and the arches through movement. So I really stimulate an awakeness in the foot through movement. That's what I do. Maybe you find that's useful, I don't know. Certainly try. And then when you're ready, lift up, hug around, and then again, focus on the inner groin, the inner groin release. Which is a meditation. Because it doesn't just happen to the body. You know, it's not like I can't just tell my body to release the inner groin, nothing happens. It's not how it works. But I can enter into a relationship. I can hold that idea in my head, the inner groin's going to open. And then I introduce that to the body, and that's the conversation begins. Inner groin opening. And as it opens, the whole spine opens. But it's a meditation. It's a meditation. And it leaves you in a better place than if you hadn't done it. Okay, well done. Good show. Jolly hockey sticks. Kick out the legs a little bit. Take the feet into a generous stride, a wide stride, hands on the hips, deep breath. Good, deep breaths. Perhaps you can feel the relationship between the tailbone and the pubic bone. It's not complicated, it's a relationship. So we don't want to be heavy. No? We want it to breathe and move and communicate. So you feel it like that with that spirit, pelvic floor. Turn the left toes in and the right foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot first and finishing off the turn on the heel. So you've got heel to arch alignment, which we'll check, I'm sure. Let's have a look. Yeah, we got it. Stretch the arms, lift the chest. Support, or imagine there's a support on the back of the front leg, from the back of the front leg. Inhale, exhale. Imagine that support from the back of the front leg. Obviously the hamstrings feel this. Huh? So share it, not just through the muscles, but through the myofascia. By moving the pelvis, perhaps slightly forwards and backwards to feel the effect that has on the legs. Feeling subtle change of weight on your heels. Again, forwards and backwards. Keep the jaw passive. Disappear into the sensations. Your breath will tell you when the disappearing begins, because it will open up. Disappear. Inhale, come on up. Feet forwards, hands to hips, deep breath. Take a few deep breaths. It's really wonderful to take a few deep breaths, especially when you look like that. You look like a superhero. Perhaps I do too. Yeah, exactly. Superhero. Take on the world. Turn your back toes in, front foot and front leg out. Wonderful to see so many superheroes on one computer screen. And to know that we're all part of the same superhero team. Stretch the arms out. Breathe deep. Feel the weight on the feet. There could be multiple movements that are part of you feeling the weight on the feet. Imagine and perhaps even just feel, tangize, support from the back of the leg to the front of the leg. Inhale. Exhale. Come down into your Trikonasana. For me, it's all about subtlety. I'm sure it is for you too, right? Breath is everything. Trust it. Rest in it. Be inspired by it. Obviously, the word to breathe in is literally to inspire. Inhale, come on up. Beautiful. Nice job. Hands on the hips. Take deep breaths. Now we're going to forward fold, so you might want to get stuff to put for your hands down in front of you, unless you know you don't or you've got it there already. Turn your toes in, Prasrita Padottanasana, and see what you can do for the little toes in terms of just stretching them out. I love the timelessness of these projects. That's what benefits me most. So if I say extend the little toes out, It's not a thing you can really just kind of go, yep, okay, done, what now? It takes time, time beyond time. Okay. Stretch out from the inner groins. Inhale. Exhale, hinge from the hip joints, fold over the top of the front thighs, let the legs draw up, bring your fingertips to your support, unless the pelvis keeps moving, that's fine, but most of us benefit tremendously from coming into what's called Prasvita Padottanasana Ekam, that is fingertips on the floor or blocks with the chest parallel to the floor. So that's probably the best place for most people to spend quite a lot of time in the parallel to the floor position, adjusting, readjusting. All this marvelous, marvelous intimacy here and now. It's so beautiful, it's so loving. And what is it that we're loving? What we call the goddess. So Shiva is said to be pure consciousness, the quiescent ground of the universe, that tradition. And then Shakti is the manifesting from all the pure potential. So to feel the pure potential that constantly manifests, sustains, and reabsorbs particular aspects of its wave. So it's wave particle theory. So the whole universe, Shiva is like a wave. In fact, in the tradition, Shiva is sometimes described like that as Urmi, the wave. And just like energy, waves do express in particular locales in space-time as particularities, as particles, like you and me. Yeah? Like a little a particle. It's like a wave that has phosphorescence in it, if you've ever seen those. As the wave tumbles over, the little phosphorescent algae in the water lights up in little particles. Okay, now we're coming back to the fingertip position. If you did go lower, we're going to walk the feet a little closer to each other, and we're going to lead with the chest to come up. I like to imagine the back of the legs drawing down towards the heels, and then walk your feet in towards each other. Well done. Have a little kick out. We're going to have a little lay down on our backs. Not quite corpse pose yet, and I know you don't want it to be, neither do I, but it's not far off it. But we are going to lay down on our back. So make sure you're good to go for a couple more poses, and then it will be sadly corpse pose. Firstly, just hugging the legs. Just hugging the legs. Good old-fashioned leg hugging. Great. And you might roll left and you might roll right. Or you might stay in the center. You know, all good. Whatever works in terms of absorption. But it's never restless. It's always lila artha lakshana. Play, purpose, signs. Lila artha lakshana. If I roll this way, there's an absorption. If I roll that way, if I pause, I disappear for a moment. When you're ready, return to center. Place the feet, or the fleet, but the feet are better, down on the floor. Put my L in too early. Stretch your arms towards your feet. where you can either hold the yoga mat, that's what I recommend, or if you're long of arm and short of torso, then you might easily reach the front shins, so that's fine as well. Either way, tone the tummy in an urami, and in a wave, in and up. And then on the exhale, lift up your pelvis. As soon as you're lifting up, turn your arms out. As soon as you're lifting up, turn your arms out. Open your chest. Moving left, moving right, moving up, moving down. A variety of movements can be brought in to find the pelvic floor, to get that sort of intimacy with the present that allows you to not squeeze the buttocks together, although they're toned, to push the pelvis up. So it's a beautifully subtle switching off some of the fibers of the gluteus maximus, those that would turn the thighs out, while keeping on other fibers, those that extend the hips. Come down slowly, letting your arms internally rotate. Walk your feet a bit further from your bum. And if you're good to go for Shavasana, make sure first your head and neck are nice and long. So you might want to put, say, a blanket support under your head, or a block support, or just stretch out the neck a little. Palms face up. Fine to keep the legs bent or to extend the legs down to the floor. Shoulder blades just scooted under the body. Shoulder blades just scooted under the body. And obviously make sure you're warm enough too. Its eyes closed. Feel the weight of the body. When you shine a light into a jar of water, it seems as if the jar of water is filled with light. That's the context for excuse me, this reading. Even innumerable means cannot reveal Shiva, the pure, quiescent ground, consciousness itself. Can a jar reveal the sun? Pondering thus, one with a lofty vision gets absorbed immediately in Shiva, who is self-luminous. Allow your fingers and toes to have a little wiggle. And when ready, you can bend your legs. Place the feet on the floor, tuck the buttocks under, and roll onto your side, onto your left side. Lay as comfortably as you can there. Roll to your right when you feel ready. And when you're ready, come up from your side.